Our next topic is brought to us by the Cleveland Charge. Experience Charge basketball at Public Hall this season. The Cleveland Charge, the NBA G League affiliate of the Cavaliers, are back in action for their 5th season with Cleveland, with Charge alumni like Dean Wade and Sam Merrill, and two-way players like Naquan Tomlin and Luke Travers, showing the NBA the G League is the home to future stars at the highest level. Charge basketball is the best option for affordable family fun in the land, with fan giveaways, exciting theme nights, post-game player autographs, and more. The Charge tip off their home opener Friday, November 14th at 7 p.m. against the Wisconsin Herd. It is opening night presented by Rocket, and the first 2,000 fans receive a mini hoop schedule. Tickets are on sale right now at clevelandcharge.com. I'll be there, so come over and say what's up.
Is that a new logo?
It is a new logo.
It's
they have
cool.
new
I like it.
A new arena, a new court.
I like that.
Oh, they're not playing the same place they played last year?
Well, they moved from Wolfstein Center to Rocket Arena for a few games. Now they're at Public Hall, which is the
right. But they were there last year, weren't
exactly. But they changed the court, like a brand new court.
Oh, cool.
To feature the new
I
logo.
want to go, Mike. Can you get me tickets or what?
On Friday?
Well, no, I don't know. No, I can't go Friday, but I would like to go.
Yeah, anytime you need tickets at Charge, I got you.
All right, cool.
That is easy. All right, guys. Jay, you actually put this in the group chat yesterday, and I was going to do it. So I'm going to let you start on this first one. But we're going to run Paul Depodesta's comments about the Browns through the BS translator. If anyone missed it, Paul Depodesta had his first press conference with the Colorado Rockies yesterday. And he was asked about the Deshaun Watson trade and leaving baseball to go to football and then coming back to baseball. So I picked two of these comments. We're going to put them through the BS translator, see what we can figure out what Paul Depodesta really meant. This was on going to football and then leaving football to go back to baseball. Paul Depodesta said this, and I quote, "I didn't have any immediate plans, obviously, to come back to baseball. I knew it was going to take me a while to get my sea legs in the NFL. I wasn't going to be like a 2-year thing. I was starting from ground zero. I mean, I knew nothing, so I was going to have to dedicate some real years to it." He went on to say, "But if you know your first love, you kind of always have that in the back of your mind, and there are certain situations in baseball that I've always just been really intrigued by. I thought, boy, if those were to ever come available, that would be pretty intriguing, and so this was one of those," end quote.
Yeah, which is hilarious because the Rockies are the worst franchise in baseball by far.
He went from the worst in football to the worst in baseball.
Right, I mean, like, I was actually debating with somebody the other day, what's a worse franchise, the Browns or the Rockies? And ultimately, we decided the Rockies was the worst franchise.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that. Wasn't the Rockies just in the World Series?
Not that long ago. Now,
Well, it was long enough.
look, what was it, like 20 years ago?
Yeah, it was 2008.
Yeah. So, yes, over the last 25 years, the Rockies have probably had more success than the Browns.
Yeah.
I was just
I'm
saying.
talking about current state.
Current state.
Current state.
I said the Rockies.
Yeah.
I agreed that the Rockies were like the Rockies. I think as bad as the White Sox were the year before, I think last year's Rocky team was the worst team I've ever seen.
Well, they caught fire.
Yeah.
They got warm late,
Yeah.
which kept them from
Right.
surpassing the record that was just
but
set.
if you look at like point run differential, it was
abysmal.
crazy.
They were losing. They lost some games like 22-4.
Yeah. They're
like those are little league embarrassments.
They are horrible.
This guy, see, this is what I always say. Beware of Ivy League dudes who do this stuff, man. Like, they know exactly what they're doing. They be bouncing from place to place, cashing checks, right? Like, he's like, think about this.
Yeah.
In what world, I'm just asking everybody, chat, what world out there, in what universe could I or you go into an industry that you have no clue about,
and be the top
no
executive,
experience,
right?
and be the top executive?
Yeah.
It's like me. It's like me going to NASA.
Gee, I'm glad you pointed that out. Steve, pull this back.
You got to
real
find
quick.
a sucker.
Yeah.
And he found one.
Jimmy.
Part of the quote that stood out to me the most.
Yeah, that he knew nothing.
I mean, I knew nothing.
I like the part about getting his sea legs.
I knew he said, this is his words, not mine. I did not make this up. This is not AI. You can go find the actual press conference. He was hired to be the chief strategy officer of the Cleveland Browns. And G, do you want to read that real quick? That third to bottom line.
Listen, I got to start with I got to get to the whole thing. I didn't have immediate plans, obviously, to come back to baseball. I knew it was going to take me a while to get my sea legs in the NFL.
Yeah, come here. We got time.
I wasn't going to be like a 2-year thing. I was starting from ground zero.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew nothing. So I was going to have to dedicate some real years to it. Well, let me go ahead. It's so easy a caveman can do it. I did say at a Holiday Inn Express. So let me go out. Let me see. You know what? People want to go, hey, Elon Musk, I ain't got no rocket experience. But let me show you how I could get you to Mars in not 6 months without any math. I could just do it and pull up on you tomorrow. Tell your engineers and all the scientists and the chemical rocket guys, I don't really know nothing about what's going on, but I'm going to tell you what. I do wear nice clothes, and I know about the Cleveland Browns dysfunction. Go ahead and make me your top guy. Who said, in what universe could this happen?
Well, as Jay said, he found a sucker. He found a sucker in Jimmy Haslam.
Jimmy was the sucker.
It's crazy if you think about that. First of all, part of the reason he left baseball is because nobody else wanted him in baseball at the time.
Fact.
And he was the third choice of the worst team in the league, even at this point.
Yeah.
And guys around the league were shocked that he got this job. There was a lot of surprise.
And why is it intriguing? What do you mean it's intriguing?
There's nothing intriguing about it. You wanted to get back to baseball. All right, fine.
So what he wants is a continued paycheck.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what he wants.
Right.
And he knew that he had worn his welcome out with the Browns.
Yeah.
I do believe that, and God, I hope a book is written. I hope somebody does the deep dive on last year's draft.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
I have opined on this show that I think last year Paul Depodesta was kicked out of the room.
Yep.
I believe that. Why? Because they got a number of the picks right.
Yeah.
As opposed to go back and look at all the drafts that he's been here for.
Them other drafts that he was here, the Anthony Schwartz stuff.
Listen, who knows? I don't believe that personally because that, to me, takes Andrew Berry off the hook, like he was being stopped. I think Andrew Berry is in lockstep with Paul Depodesta.
Well, here's the thing, and I told this to someone yesterday. If Andrew Berry keeps his job, and there is a world, by the way, where that happens. If Andrew Berry keeps his job, it's because Jimmy Haslam knows that Andrew Berry was handcuffed for his first couple of years.
Yeah. Right.
And then Andrew said, okay, let's make a controllable experiment here. I'm going to take Paul out of the draft room.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Andrew, it's yours. You got 1 year, brother. Get it right.
Make it work.
So to me, if Andrew Berry keeps his job, my theory is closer to me to being proven true. Because only Jimmy knows. I found it fascinating, you guys, that Paul Depodesta, sat in front of the Colorado Rockies media in Denver. I think he had no choice.
Right.
Management said, we're going to introduce you to the media, and he didn't say, I want to hide in San Diego.
Right.
They said, no, we don't do that here.
Yeah.
We're transparent. You're going to sit in front of the media, and you're going to answer their questions.
Right.
So we finally got his answer to the Deshaun Watson.
Well, that's where we're going
Well,
next.
before you do that, there's one other thing I want to comment on that.
Please.
Because there's always, we don't know for sure how involved he was with football decisions. We could speculate.
Sure.
But we don't know for sure, what, was it a 10? Was it a 1?
But he did say on the Watson thing, it was very much me.
Right. But, okay, that's fine. So that gives you some clarity. But also, when he says, I knew nothing, right, I had a lot to learn.
Yeah.
That tells me there was at least a decent amount of involvement. Because if he was just there to structure the organization, he wouldn't need to know football necessarily.
He wouldn't.
Right? If you have a lot of teams will have the president of the organization who's in charge of sales, who's in charge of tickets, whatever. Those guys don't have to know baseball or football. No. They have to know business. They have to know how to make budgets, whatever like that. If that was what he was doing, who cares if you know football?
Right.
But clearly he was on some level. May not have been 100%, but on some level, he was involved in football decisions.
Jay, have you ever, I know this to happen to you. Have you ever, because when you start moving up the ranks, you start meeting people from all different walks of life. Have you ever had somebody that you knew that when you met them in the beginning, they talk a real good game, you're like, hey, this guy's a sharp guy.
Yeah.
And then after a while, it goes on, you meet somebody new. And then you start to get to know this new person, and do you start to realize, well, this guy's connected, this guy knows his stuff. And then you start to talk, and you start to see that the person you knew first didn't have a clue. And the guy that you just met, who you see the dividends, who you see his network, you see what he's done, he comes up and says, yeah, I mean, he's a cool dude, but look for this, and this.
Yeah, so to answer your question, G, yes, but there's two things that happen. Sometimes that person exposes themselves.
Yeah.
Particularly when you're dealing with a space that you know intimately. Bull, if you met a radio executive, you would be able to spot the imposter from the real deal in a very short
5
period of
minutes.
time.
5
Very
minutes.
short.
Yeah.
You'd start having conversations. You'd talk about experience, where you've been, what you've done, what you see, theories, philosophies. And in a very, very short order, the imposter flags start popping up in your brain.
Oh, you posing.
Now, you're a poser.
Yeah.
Now, so with Paul Depodesta, the thing that has always blown my mind about him is the fact that he came from a completely different industry.
Right.
Sports related, but that's where the comparisons and similarities end between football and baseball. You know that.
Of course.
But particularly when it comes to roster structuring, his star rose with the movie Moneyball.
That's crazy.
And I know you liked the movie. The movie itself was entertaining.
It's entertaining. It was not realistic.
As far as Moneyball being an actual realistic, true to life account of what happened, it couldn't have been more further from the truth. I watched it as a screener when it was coming out and we were going to do big things with it at ESPN. And I watched it before it ever hit theaters. And all I could think of was, God dang, this thing is not factually correct. They never mentioned the name Miguel Tejada.
Right.
An MVP. Well, you saw the back of his jersey once.
Right.
This guy was a shortstop, an MVP.
And they're 3 Cy Young level pitchers.
They're 3 Cy Young caliber stars.
I think they mentioned Eric Chavez once.
I didn't count, but like in just watching it, I'm going, okay, what about this Atlanta Braves-esque pitching staff
that you got?
And they never mentioned it. And what they focused on was Scott Hatteberg, who was the guy that baseball had determined.
Chad Bradford.
Yes. Baseball had decided, he's like a journeyman. He's like, doesn't bring a lot to the table. But Jonah Hill, in his infinite wisdom, and Brad Pitt, those were the guys that played Paul Depodesta and Billy Beane. They decided, he does get on base a lot, and there's something here. And then he had one big hit in the season, and they focused that with the big crescendo music and the carrying off on the shoulders scene. And at the end of the movie, this was the part where I was just like rolling my eyes. I'm like, I'm done with this. Although the A's never managed to win an American League title,
the end scripting.
the Boston Red Sox, using the same Moneyball tactics, went on to break their 75-year curse and win a World Series in 2003 or whatever.
They had the biggest bag in the world.
And I just thought, oh my God, their salary that year was over $200 million, which is now like $300 million.
They were loaded.
They were loaded with talent. Now, did they employ some of the similar things? Yes, they did. Of course they did. This was the front edge of analytics and its integration into baseball. And so, the Red Sox had used some of that, but to put these guys up on pedestals and say, like, they've recreated sports, and Jimmy Haslam saw the movie, and he got carried away with the big, exciting music and the, hey, I like that guy, and then he met him somewhere at a dinner party.
So he was influenced by 2 movies, that and Draft Day, huh?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's talk about the
another
football
unrealistic
side.
I'm just going to read what I read to you, what I sent to the group yesterday on the BS translator, if you let me. You want me to do that?
Yeah, and then we'll get to the Watson one.
Okay, so this was, when his quotes came out, I was going crazy upstairs. So here's what I wrote. I said to the guys, I ran his comments through the BS translator. Here's what he said. My ass was cooked in Cleveland. They found me out to be the fraud I am. Jimmy wasn't buying my expletive anymore, so I knew I was about to get bleep canned. So it was time to find another sucker. Hello, Colorado.
Exactly.
Ever see Moneyball? That's what this... And the crazy thing is, he's found another sucker.
Well, let's get to his Deshaun Watson quote. Before we get to the Deshaun Watson quote, today's show is sponsored by BetterHelp. As the days get shorter, nights come earlier, it can start to feel a little heavier, especially when life is already packed with work, family, and everything else. This season, it's important to reach out and check in with family, friends, or even yourself. And checking in on a teammate or reconnecting with someone you haven't seen in a while can lift your spirits. Reaching out for therapy can make a real difference, too. BetterHelp makes that first step easier by connecting you with a licensed therapist from wherever you are. This month, don't wait to reach out. Whether you're checking in on a friend or reaching out to a therapist yourself, BetterHelp makes it simple to take that first step. UCSS listeners get 10% off their first month at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. All right, this is what Paul Depodesta had to say about Deshaun Watson and the trade that brought him to Cleveland. Quote, Here's what I would say, and I truly believe this. I believe that most decisions, especially the big ones like that, are organizational decisions, right? I'm not a believer in the King Scout situation where there is one guy who makes every call. The jobs are too complex. The decisions are too hard. They impact too many different things. So I always think these are sort of collective decisions. It can be hard to get unanimous opinions on those type of things. Everyone who is a part of that, we all own that. We just do. That's part of the deal, end quote. Gee, what do you make of that?
That's called what we call spreading the blame.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't really take
the
blame.
I think
certainly not.
I think he just said, "Hey, organizational. Hey, look, this was very unpopular. I do not want to go into my new job having other people think that I was the main culprit in making this deal." You know, when you look at his statements, it just goes to show you that when he said the King Scout thing, that tells me more about what he thought about Dorsey.
That's exactly what I said, G. That's why Dorsey's gone. He lost the power struggle with
I don't
Paul
believe in
Depodesta.
King Scout.
Who would you like to have back?
Dorsey. I take him because Dorsey is telling them, oh, the guys that you guys have now that are still decent, those were my picks. And he was like, well, listen, we need to be more collaborative. And Jason has said it. They was kicking him out the room. And by the way, they were right to kick him out of the room. He just told you in the last paragraph that he had ground zero knowledge and didn't know a thing. And yet and still, this is the guy I'm going to go back and talk to about quarterbacks and who. I done forgot more than you ever knew about football. What did we talk? Yeah, you got to get out, bro.
Yeah,
that's
especially then when that's when he first started.
That's when he started.
So like he really knew. He
And
literally
I
knew
think,
nothing.
G, if you go back and look at his tenure here, I think early on he kind of slow rolled it. You know, he realized that, and look, I don't know everything, so he stayed in the background. And I think, G, you nailed it. When I read that, I said, oh, King Scout, take those two words out.
Yeah.
That's John Dorsey.
Yep.
That's exactly who that is.
Yeah.
And we knew at the time there was a serious power struggle going on inside the building. And it was clear the winner of that power struggle was Paul Depodesta. If you look at the draft picks in his tenure, we had a lot of hits early in his tenure when it was John Dorsey.
Yep.
And then once John was thrown out of the room, King Scout, you're not allowed in here.
Where these hits come
And Jimmy said, you're the guy. You're the guy, Paul. Make me the Oakland A's. Okay, then it's all him. And I think, again, this is a theory, I think that we know what that batch of draft picks was. When he was in charge and Dorsey was out of the building, we've got a collection of absolute fails in our drafts.
Yeah.
And I think in Jimmy is so well-intended, guys. Jimmy's not intentionally screwing this up. Jimmy wants to win more than anybody because his name is the one getting slandered and thrown through the mud here. I think Jimmy, finally, the clarity has hit him. Well, we were not bad when Dorsey was making the picks. And when the new King Scout came in and started telling everybody who we were going to draft, we went in the tank. And last year, I empowered Andrew, this is your draft. Make it a good one.
Yeah.
And I know you disagree with that, Bull, but and I don't know that we'll ever find out.
We won't. But to me, that just puts all the blame on Depodesta, and that would be great if that were the case, but I just don't buy that.
I think he's I've sat here in this chair for 3 years.
Yeah.
And I've said outside of Jimmy Haslam, the single biggest person to blame for this train wreck is the boogeyman. We named him the boogeyman because we don't know what he does.
I just think Andrew Berry's as much to blame as Depodesta
I don't know. We'll find out. If Andrew keeps his job, to me, that just solidifies my theory. Because he got this last draft. Someone got this last draft right.
I think,
and Paul Depodesta's leaving the organization. Why? He saw these draft picks that Andrew picked, not him. He saw them hit, and he's like, oh, hell. I got to find a new sucker.
I think what happened was, I agree with that. I look at it, your chief strategy officer, you look at those drafts, and you can look to the fingerprint. And they gave Andrew Berry opportunity. That is the reason why Kevin Stefanski is at the place he's at. Because the one thing that Kevin Stefanski had and the power he wanted, he said, well, listen, I get to pick who I want to pick. I'm going to pick my quarterback. I'm going to put him on the team. He chose Dylan Gabriel. That was his move. Now, the problem is, where did Shedeur Sanders come into play?
Yeah, well,
whose move was that?
They still behaved like they always behaved. Yes, they've gotten some picks right for the first time in a while, but trading down in the first round was typical Browns behavior. All these trades.
I think that was a good move.
Well, we'll see in the long run how good Mason Graham is. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, Travis Hunter has been.
He's hurt.
I know, but he wasn't great before that.
I hear you, but you didn't have to take Travis Hunter. There were other options too. You didn't.
I know, but I think. I mean, maybe I'm misremembering.
But I'm just saying,
the big decision was: are you going to take Travis Hunter, or are you going to move down from that pick?
I just don't buy that. All of a sudden, Andrew Berry. Everything we know about him leads me to believe that he's in lockstep with Paul Depodesta. There's no reason to believe otherwise.
We were told
he's a total
that, but let me ask you this.
Yeah.
If you come into a radio station and you know that your predecessor was bounced out by the station manager because they didn't agree, doesn't that change the way you approach your job and the station manager?
Sure,
that's a good point.
Andrew Berry, what we know about him, he's in the mold of Paul Depodesta, where he's all about the analytics, as far as I know.
Yeah,
I have never, when I've worked in radio, not one program director I've had ever spent time on the air. That makes a difference. That makes a difference to me. They come from a different perspective.
I know, but I only use that analogy, Bull, because I would say that during my career, particularly when I was younger in my career and felt less secure in either my ability or my position at the station, I watched people move. And I saw what people that were no longer with the company, what they did, what were their moves that got them bounced.
It's the chess move.
And I think that, well, it's human nature, it's survival, and I think that I don't think it's a big surprise why John Dorsey got bounced.
In the end,
he got big-footed by.
In the end,
Paul Depodesta.
We don't know what happened. We don't know if this is changing.
But again,
it's just speculation.
And that's
I agree with you on the front end that I give John Dorsey credit and Paul Depodesta no credit for what John Dorsey did. Now, what he did wasn't perfect.
I know, but wouldn't you agree that once Dorsey was run out of the organization, that's when our drafts went to hell?
That is correct. And I blame the combination, for me, I blame the combination of Depodesta and Berry for that. I don't separate one from the other.
Now, here the reason why
we'll never know. I wish we would.
We'll never know. Yeah, I wish we would.
We'll see.
He's the GM.
We'll see what the separation is, because Depodesta, I wholeheartedly believe that they told him thanks but no thanks. I'm gonna give you a common courtesy to go find another job. Now, if you look at it, think about it like this. If they were out on Andrew Berry, or say for instance the organization didn't like Andrew Berry, they would have never given him permission to do two things: get rid of Joe Flacco in the middle of the season, or say I'm gonna draft Shedeur Sanders.
Yeah, I'm still not sure, G and Bull. I'm still not sure who made that call. To me,
Shedeur?
Yeah, to me, it has the fingerprints of Jimmy Haslam on it. I just believe because the organization was in public lockstep on one thing, Shedeur wasn't our guy. I mean, they made that very, very clear. And that's why when they ended up drafting him, I immediately said, oh, here's the drama for 2025.
Yeah.
You always have to have it, and it's self-inflicted. And I believe, and again, we won't know because no one in this organization ever gives us any true, straightforward answers. But the pointed question I would ask to Kevin and Andrew and Jimmy, and maybe Paul could give you some light on this. Ask all three of them who made the call on Shedeur, because the night before, when he still wasn't taken, they were publicly in lockstep that we're not going to take him.
So let me give you this.
And then someone enters the room and says, you're going to take him.
Really quick, this makes sense. So say, for instance, if this whole thing is happening and Jimmy Haslam is looking at Paul Depodesta and saying, you know what, I'm kind of out on this, right?
I'm going to put you on ice and give Andrew some power.
I'm kind of out on you a little bit. If they're looking at the statistical categories and everything that they said about the supercomputer, Dylan Gabriel is smart, he does this, boom, boom, boom. If that is the guy that they wanted and Kevin said, I want this guy, guess what? If you're a smart owner, you hedge the bet. Because you're looking at Depodesta like, I don't even know if I trust you. I think I'm leaning towards getting rid of you, and that's your pick. Well, here's what I'm going to do. Let me hedge my bet. Hey, AB, they drafted Dylan Gabriel. That's cool. I don't know if that's going to pan out or work out. But here's what I want you to do. I want you to, because they had to move up back in to get him.
They did.
I want to hedge my bet. If that don't work out, I can always move and see which one of this is going to be. So now it's a setup. Now we're looking at it. I'm going to see what Dylan Gabriel is doing and who picked him. I'm also going to see what Shedeur Sanders is doing and who picked him. Which one was correct?
The flaw in your argument, though, is you said if I were a smart owner, and we know Jimmy's not a smart owner.
Not. No, but what G is saying makes sense in that Jimmy's looking at, well, I can basically get a first-round pick. There were guys that, again, Mel Kiper's been doing this a long time. I trust Mel. He said he had the highest quarterback rate of anybody coming out. So if I can understand Jimmy's infatuation with Shedeur, and also, it wasn't a value here, it wasn't a value here, but God, if I can get him in the fifth round, a guy that had the highest quarterback grade from the guru, if I can get him in the fifth round. Now, the problem that created, G, and I like it, I like having another option, and I can't wait to see him. The problem that created was you guys saw the looks on the faces of Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski when that card was turned in and that name was read. It was like someone just stepped on their dog's neck.
Right. They can say whatever they want.
They can bull crap. No. We saw it. We know human reaction. We know what that was. Here's the built-in drama that they made. Mm-hmm. So now it's going to be my guy versus your guy. Yep. And now, instead of always fighting the other 31 teams, there's internal struggle.
Which we've seen many, many times.
We have. And that makes the cracks of the foundation bust down, and then you're building it up again. Yeah.